Welcome to Pallet Land, a pallet-themed amusement park. What in the world are we doing here, you might ask? We are getting free lumber to build our chicken coop. We are Alex and Elena, a couple in our mid-20s working towards financial independence and self-sustainability.
Follow our journey as we grow, build, fix, and learn the skills we need to get us there.
You might not see it right away, but if you look closely, there's a chicken coop in this pile of pallets. Elena's first Sawzall usage. Hold it up. Nice. Goodness gracious, that was a lot of sawing, but we got a lot of wood and it was all free. I think if we would have bought this at Home Depot, it would have been at least a few $100s. A lot of half-inch sheets of plywood, some 4x3-ish pallet boards, I don't know what you call them. This is actually like plank board. These three are going to be our roof material, roof sheathing material. And then there's two more pallets underneath here, two of the good pallets, the rest of the coop's made out of, and then some more plywood on top. Here are the pallets we got. In the way of pallets, they are really, really nice. They're probably were only used once or twice. No broken boards or anything, and really sturdy. And the best thing about them is the sizing. The length of 2 equals the width of 3. Also got this thin stuff. It's 1/4-inch plywood. It'll be good for interior surfaces. I laid out the pallets, and this is kind of what I'm envisioning. These are going to be like barn-style doors that both swing wide open so you can have full access to the entire chicken coop. On one end is going to be a little door for them to escape out of and get down into their run. It'll be a ramp downwards. On the back wall here, and ignore the fact that I don't have another pallet yet, we're going to do nesting boxes. For the roof, I'm thinking about doing just a shed-style pitched roof. So I would basically build like little triangular frames at whatever slope I wanted. The first step is going to be to make this base of 3 pallets here a solid, sturdy surface. And I'm going to do that by running 4x4s across the whole thing. One key element of why we're making this out of pallets is so it's going to be movable by a set of forks on my tractor. So I want to keep the bottoms as open as possible, but that's going to be the best way to make this one sturdy platform. It's time to present my plans to the township supervisor. So I got some chicken scratch on the paper here. Plan view, which is like a bird's eye top-down view, and then the side view. I drew out the 3 pallets here and the two pallets on the ends. These are all nesting boxes. I'll spare you the boring details of the rest of the plans because honestly I changed them a lot as I was building anyway. You'll see how it turns out. It's pretty much the plan in a nutshell. What do you think, town supervisor?
Well, I think there's some small details we have to work out, but overall I approve.
Fast forward a few weeks, finally had some time to work on this project. Flipped all the pallets upside down, put the runners in, put some shims in because of course none of this lumber is meant to go together. So shimmed it out and then just drove some 3-inch nails through this side of it. I'm gonna flip it over once I get the 4 legs on and put nails through the top side too.
It's not a game, it's a ranch thing.
I batch cut 8 45-degree angle leg braces, so now I'm going to install those. After tipping this thing up on its side, I can tell you it's already very, very heavy. It's probably like I would say at least 200 pounds already. So I am going to do all the nailing on the top surface here down through my two runners, and then I'm also going to drive some really long lag bolts. I might even do a through bolt actually, all the way down through the 4 legs, and then it will go through the runner too that's underneath here. That way this is going to be as sturdy as a base as it can possibly be. These are 10-inch lag bolts left over from a sign project my dad did like 30 years ago at this point. This is 100% the sturdiest table I've ever built. Now it's ready for some walls and a roof and nesting boxes, and then it'll be a chicken coop. Got the pallet sitting up here now. This is my preliminary game plan. To maximize square footage in here, I don't really want these back walls to be sitting up on the pallets like they are now. I want to push them back a little bit, and that way I can line this pallet up with the one beneath it, and then I can drive screws or lag bolts straight down into the block below it. So I have a sturdy mounting surface there. What I think I'm gonna do is on the fronts here where it's kind of ugly anyway, I'm gonna throw a 2x6 on top of that, and the same on the back side. And that way when I push that back wall back and the front wall forward, which is actually gonna be a door, this whole thing's gonna be able to open up, it will have support from that 2x6 underneath of it. It's not often you need an angle drill, but when you need it, it really comes in handy. Got the 2x6s nailed on, and it looks so much better. You can hardly tell this thing's gonna be made out of pallets at the end of it. Also got these walls clamped on here temporarily, but you can see what I mean with the ledger. They're basically sitting on the 2x6. Next step is to brace the back wall together and get it fastened in. Probably gonna follow a similar method and run whatever lag bolts I have left through those back blocks there. Got my lag bolt in the center. To hold the 2 pallets in the back together, I'm gonna put a 2x4 both on the middle and the bottom. Right now I just have some clamps holding it together. At the bottom corners, I'm gonna use these guys here. They're just like these Simpson corner joist hangers. I just found them, so they would be useful. At the top, I'm going to run 2x6 top plates, and I'm going to kind of overlap the corner there, so it will be held together at the top with the overlapping top plate. Top plates are in. Next step, I'm going to do a mini framed wall right here, which is going to support the rafters. I'm just going to do a regular old rafter style slanted roof, hook them on this end, hook them on the top of the wall I'm about to build, and then I'll be ready to put the doors on. I'm just eyeballing about what slope I want the roof. Don't really have any set plans, and I'm going to angle my little stud wall here so that I only have to cut a bird's mouth on one of the sides, which would be that back side. That was the end of day 1 progress on the coop. We're starting day 2 now. First project for today is going to be to cut the rafters out of 2x4s. First one is done. Got my little bird's mouth cut in, and the ends are trimmed levels for if I ever want to put a fascia board on it. The first one's always the toughest. I'm going to use this one as a template for the other 6, and we'll get it knocked out. Would you just look at that? We have the beginnings of a roof. Full disclosure, this was my first time ever framing up anything that resembled a roof, so it's definitely not perfect. Good lessons learned. My bird's mouths I started doing with the circular saw and the Sawzall, and I found that was not the ideal combo for this small of a bird's mouth, so there are some gaps. The jigsaw worked a lot better. That's a jigsaw one. So that's a good lesson learned. But overall, it's not terrible. I think it'll do just fine for the chicken coop roof. For the attachment of this header wall, I wanted to use something a little bit sturdier than just toenails. So I'm gonna use the Craig pocket jig. If you've never seen one of these, I'd highly recommend it. Super, super easy. You adjust the clamp to the thickness of your stock, in this case, 1.5 inches. I'm using a 2x4. Clamp it on with the little feet hooked. Use their special drill bit adjusted per their instructions. Take it off. Now you have a perfectly drilled shallow hole to put a screw in that will go perfectly through the back center of this. Now with an extra long bit, you can drive in the screw. For the roof, I'm going to be using these panels, which are 1-inch thick boards. This came out of a much larger crate that we cut into 3 sections. Holes. I'm going to do 3 boxes. We have 7 hens, so that's more than enough for 7 hens. This distance right here is 3 foot, and the nesting boxes are about 1 foot cube. So I'm just going to cut this whole section of this pallet out, and then I'm going to build this out 1 foot with a removable or raisable lid on hinges. It's for our 3 nesting box, and I'll put 2 dividers in there. While I was at it, I went ahead and cut the entrance door to the coop, little 1x1 square. There's going to be a ramp coming down from there. So before I get any further, I want to put exterior sheathing on. I'll build the nesting boxes on top of the sheathing. This is the material we have to work with for sheathing. It is 1/2-inch plywood, and these were also part of very large crates. So they have a frame of like 1x4s around them, and I was planning on just cutting out the center to get just a sheet of plywood out of it that's smaller than 4x8. So we'll see how that pans out. Look at that, world's largest picture frame. Three sides now have sheathing. I'm cutting my penetrations for the coop door and also the nesting boxes. I'll kind of show you how I do that. Similar to how it's done on houses where doors and windows get cut out. I drilled a bunch of holes along the very inside edge so I can see where the penetration is on the outside. That allows me to draw lines on the outside using those holes, and then I can take my saw, run them along the lines, and pop the piece of wood out. Time for doors. Got the first one mocked up. Going to put this piece of plywood on it. So it's flush with the outside surface, and then I have 3 strap hinges that I picked up from Home Depot that will go and screw into the 3 plywood blocks. I'm hoping that this pressed composite stuff holds screws well. I haven't really tested it out yet, so I will be using like 3-inch screws because this is a pretty sizable door. So it'll probably weigh like 40-50 pounds when it's all done, but we'll see how it holds up. Check it out. Smooth as silk. It is going to be so nice to be able to open up this entire side to scrape out all of the chicken poop right into a wheelbarrow. The great thing about designing your own chicken coop is that you can make it however you want it, and this is going to be probably one of the most ergonomic and automatic chicken coops there ever was. Can't wait to tell you more about the food and watering system we're going to put on this bad boy. And by the magic of YouTube, the second door is hung. We're now on to interior sheathing. I'm using this 1/4-inch paneling that looks like it was the top to some containers at one point. It's got this glued on metal frame, which I'm just taking my circular saw and ripping right along the edge of that to create the skinny picture frame over there. And once I have that, I'm cutting it to size, and I'm just using little 1¼ brad nails to hold it down to the pallets. I'm gonna put this on the floor, the walls, possibly the ceiling, basically all the interior surfaces so that the chickens can't roost and poop down in here where it's really hard to clean. It's just, you know, a solid, smooth cube inside of here. Interior panels are pretty much up and in on the inside of the doors as well. Next step is to build the nesting boxes. Now mind you, aside from that sketch that you saw at the beginning of the video, I haven't designed any of this ahead of time. I'm sort of designing as I build. For these nesting boxes, I'm thinking the easiest way to accomplish this is going to just take 1/2-inch plywood, the same stuff that I use for the sheathing, and make like a side here. And then I can nail them to both the insides here, and then I can lay my 1/4-inch sheeting on as a floor for it, put another 1/2-inch piece of sheathing on the outside, 1/2-inch piece for the roof, and it'll be on a hinge back here. And then I can just use 1/4-inch for my 2 dividers to make 3 boxes. I made this cardboard template so I can kind of mock up the size before I cut any wood. So the door will be somewhat like this. I'll have some roofing material on here. It should pivot up like that. Cutting those 2 templates yielded the coolest wood scrap I've ever made. A throwing star. Ready? Catch! The chickens aren't going to be very heavy, and I have a whole bunch of the ledge space here, so I'm just going to put a 1/2-inch piece of plywood kind of cantilevered out here. There we go, I think that worked out well. I put these corner supports in, and it's just a piece of 2x4 ripped in half, so I could put a couple screws in here, 1 up through the bottom, and 2 through the back when I put this back piece on. Modified my cardboard template for the dividers, and I'm just using 1/4-inch plywood for those. I'm holding these in here with these stop blocks so that in case we ever want to remove these to clean it, it'll just slide right out the front. The dividers are in, and I had forgotten to put blocking up there to seal off the pallet. I don't want any drafts coming through the inside walls here to chill the girls while they're nesting and trying to lay eggs for us. Lena has pulled me away from the coop project because she thinks she's found a dead, oh, not a dead, alive baby bird.
Oh, he's stuck between, can we get the camera back there and see him? He's stuck between the cardboard.
Yeah. Yep, that's a bird, all right.
He must have fallen. Hopefully he's not injured.
This is actually a European starling, which is an invasive species that harms a lot of our native birds. So when Elena's not around, I actually terminate these things on site.
Beautiful!
How do you feel?
Good. We saved a birdie's life.
Slap the door on. We have a nesting box. The last bit of sheathing I have to do is the cover on my little stud wall here. Having ventilation in a chicken coop is very important, so I'm actually going to be making 3 doors, a door that covers each 2 openings that we can leave open during the summer when it's going to be warmer and they need a lot of ventilation, and that we can close in the winter to prevent the inside of the coop from getting too cold. Door frames are all cut and installed, and now for each one of these I have a door that fits perfectly in the hole with just an 1/8 of an inch gap on all sides, because that's what my saw blade width is. Gosh dang it. I'm going to put hinges on the top and it will then swing open like that and latch up. So that's what the summer configuration is, and then winter we're going to close them. Only a couple more tasks before this bad boy is ready for some paint. I need to add fascia boards on the front and back. That's the board that goes on the end of the rafters here. I would like to do a mini roof on top of these doors. As water hits the face here, I don't want it to drip down inside the coop, so I'm actually going to take some leftover roofing material and do a small angled roof right there to minimize our water intrusion. And then, of course, I need to put the roofing on. That's the next task. And then finally, for a little bit more aesthetic appeal than just plain plywood, I would like to take my router with the V-groove bit and run it in vertical lines to basically simulate boards on the outside, even though it's plywood. I've used this technique before on the vanity that I built for our bathroom in a recent remodel, and it is very convincing. It looks like you legitimately have a tongue and groove board pattern and it's not plywood. So I'm gonna do that for a little bit more aesthetic appeal than just this plain plywood. After that, I think it's ready for some paint and we can put it outside to install. Oh, I gotta put metal roof on this guy too. To do this tongue and groove detail on the plywood, I'm using a 1/2 inch 90-degree V-bit loaded in my router. I'm gonna use a straight edge clamped on at evenly spaced intervals to run my router along, and that will give this appearance of looking sort of like tongue and groove boards when it's really just cheap plywood, or free plywood in this case. There's one door done versus the other one that's not. This last piece of roofing I have to cut to width, about 8 inches. And I started with the tin snips. It's very hard though once you get into it, because it does not want to bend up and out of the way like it will when you're cutting it to length. I am having success with the jigsaw, but it's not leaving the cleanest of edges. I think a power nibbler is probably the tool for this job, but if anyone knows another better way to do this, maybe with just tin snips, leave a comment down below. I'm a novice when it comes to sheet metal, so I'm still learning this stuff. You know, I was thinking I was gonna do these as doors that swung upwards, but I just had a better idea because I didn't have the right hinges. I was gonna have to go buy some hinges. Didn't really want to do that. I figured out that they actually all fit in one of the door pockets for the pallet. So I think instead of the hinge doors, whenever we want to put them back on, I'll just take them out and maybe I'll put a door latch or something on. There's one of those like gate latch things when we need to put them in the winter. And then we can just keep it open in the summer. I think it'll look better anyway. So that's handy and save us from having to buy some hinges. Routed grooves in the ventilation doors too, and just for the heck of it, since I'm not going to be hinging them, I routed some labels in there so we know where they go. For this roofing detail, I want to put like a little sloped roof here so that rain will shed if it hits this general area. I need to have kind of a sloped base for it, so I think I'm just going to take a 2x4 and screw it into the blocks of the pallets that are here, and then cut it at an angle so that I have a good sturdy base for my roof to screw onto. I just have it clamped on here to mock up, and I can scribe a line and then cut 6 more just like it. Got all the base supports up. Now I'm just gonna put some 1/2-inch plywood over that and screw my metal roof right to that. Side note, I've been wearing these 3M WorkTunes wireless headphones. They do Bluetooth, FM, AM, that kind of thing. I can absolutely rock out while I'm in here, and I'm saving my hearing at the same time. Highly recommend these things. Mini front roof section is on. Now I'm working on this, getting this fascia board up. I'm gonna do it on all 4 sides. And this is what I'm using. It's a section of the old crate that we cut up to make the roof. So this is part of the old roof panel. And I'm taking the old boards off it now so I can use these nice long boards. In a perfect world, I would have a board long enough to come out to the corner here so that I can connect the side trim at a nice clean angle there, but I didn't have that board, so I just ended it at the end of the rafters, and I'm just gonna put a thin piece of side trim on the end here to cover the edges of these boards. Finished up the trim boards on all 4 sides. Started doing some of the finishing touches like the hardware. We have a hook to keep the nesting box closed, and then another one up top to keep it open while we're getting all the eggs out. One other thing I'm going to add is a bar in front of the nesting boxes so the chickens don't kick out their straw or their nesting material while they're getting settled in. They like to kick around and scratch the floor. So I'm going to take this piece of scrap, not even 2x4, and put some hinges on it so that it can fold down, and then like a little cabinet magnet latch so that we don't have to be we can clean out the nesting box from back here. We can just use a tool, rake forward, and pull that thing back just to let it swing down and get all the old nesting material out. And then when we're done, we can just push it back up and it easily latches back in place. Here's what that looks like. The magnet I used that I found in the hardware drawer is kind of weak, so I might have to upgrade that. It depends. I'll just see if the chickens are knocking it down consistently when they're getting in the nesting box. You see, it's not super sturdy. This is pretty cool in here. I'm pretty sure people pay like $50,000 or $60,000 for a house not much bigger than this. So I may have inadvertently built a tiny house in like 4 days. And a tiny house that is not going to be blown over in a hurricane, that's for sure. Now the crown jewel of any chicken coop are the roosting bars. This is where the chickens sleep. They're flat-footed, so they like to have a flat surface to rest on. I just used a couple 2x4s. This one's around 20 inches high. That one's like 24 inches high. The chickens like to have multiple levels to sleep on because they have a pecking order, and the highest chicken in the pecking order gets to sleep the highest in the roost. I made sure to cantilever these out from the walls using these 45-degree angle supports so that we don't have any posts here to impede us from cleaning this out, and it makes cleaning a lot easier. Chickens also poop while they sleep, so most of the poop is going to accumulate right here. Elena came out and saw my idea to just do these as panels instead of actually having hinges up here. She was not a fan. So needless to say, and all you gentlemen out there with significant others know what I'm talking about, when a woman tells you what she wants, there's not much arguing after that. So I am gonna have to go run and get some more hinges to hinge these up, and one thing that's gonna be a little bit silly looking is now the the letters that I routed in here will be sort of exposed while this thing is up, but gotta do what you gotta do. Unfortunately, the fun part is basically done now, which is the building part. We still have a few final touches to do on the inside and a couple more hinges and doors and things like that, but we have to paint now. So I'm going to do the whole thing in white except for the trim boards and around the windows. I'll come back and do those in dark green later. That just matches the paint scheme for the... That just matches the paint scheme for all the other buildings on the farm. George, quiet! Shh. White. George! First coat of paint is drying. Something that I kind of overlooked that I want to have on here for the rest of the coats of paint is my exterior door. I want to do a sliding door, sliding vertically. I'm just going to use a 1/2-inch piece of plywood, slightly oversized for this opening, and then I'll do like 2 door tracks on the left and right, a stop here and a stop here, and then I'm thinking we rig like some sort of pulley system up so that we can open and close from outside the coop. Eventually I want to put an automatic opener on here where it just has like a solar powered linear actuator that raises and lowers the door every dawn and dusk. For the door track, I'm going to use these pallet spacers. They're basically U-shaped already, and I'm just going to cut this in half so I can have my 2 L-shaped pieces of track. I might make it a little bit thinner too. I'm just going to rip that on my table saw. And then once I have that, I can nail them up to the side of the building and I'll have a track. Here's the mock-up. This took me 2 tries because I try to make the rails too precise to begin with, and kind of forgot about how crooked all this wood is, and I'm sure if it were to soak any water up it would have bound up anyway. So I made it again with a lot of extra, probably at least a 1/4 inch of free play, and that seems like it's going to work. There have been a couple recent developments in the design that occurred today. First of all, change the paint scheme. We were going to do this all green, including the doors, but decided against that and went with white. And instead of just solid plywood doors like we were going to do, we thought about in the winter it's going to be really dark in here all the time if all 3 of those doors are closed. So I was actually watching a video of someone else's chicken coop, and they had basically windows with like plexiglass in it, and I thought about it and I found an old piece of plexiglass that's left over from my dad's sign business, and I took the doors that I had and I cut holes in them so they still fit in here, but we are going to paint these green and put the plexiglass behind it so that we'll have like legit windows, which would be kind of cool. Second design development. Here at Mason-Dixon Acres, we want our chickens to be dumping in the finest of luxury. So we added this custom, beautiful linoleum floor using some leftover scraps from my coworker's old house renovation, I guess it was, that we got for free from them. Got it up here on the nesting boxes too. I just used a whole bunch of staples to hold it in. A lot of staples. I don't know if these are going to actually hold long term, but we're going to see. This will be relatively easy to pull up and replace if we needed to. But we are going to have some smooth gliding poop. So smooth you might think it's on an ice rink, but instead it's just old linoleum. Putting in our hardware cloth. Got this Pneumatic staple gun. It's like 40 bucks. Pretty handy. Finally finished all the metal wire. Hopefully we have rodent-proofed the chicken coop. We also put some up on the sides here because we didn't really want them roosting up here where they're gonna poop and we can't easily clean it. Looks pretty solid. You can tell by looking at the scraps that doing this wire was a very stabby, pokey experience, and one that I hopefully don't have to do again for a while. Windows are mounted, and that only means one thing, and that is that we are finally ready to move this baby outside. You can see I put these little locks on here so that in the summer when we want this up, we just rotate this over, keeps the window up, and in the winter we'll rotate those locks to keep them shut. So it's probably appropriate now that it's done for the grand tour. Here's our sliding door. Put a little eyelet here. We're gonna tie a string to it and it can go through that hole. We painted this green here to make it look like it was a continuous board, but it's actually not, it's just paint. Thanks so much for tuning in to watch this build. Stay tuned for the next episode where we go to move this beast outside into the yard and we build the run around it for the outside area for the chickens. Feel free to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below with what you thought on the video. Until then, Mason Dixon Acre signing off.